We are in Durham, North Carolina for this episode of It's So Delicious, the city of medicine in the heart of the Research Triangle. And today we're making red rice perlo, which is a low country favorite from St. Helena Island, South Carolina, where I'm from. And we're also going to make shrimp and grits. Also, a favorite of the low country of South Carolina, where I am from, St. Helena Island in Beaufort County. I remember growing up there as a boy, having my mother make shrimp and grits, so delicious. So I'm going to make this version. This version will reflect her recipe. We are, again, a show about making home cooks feel at home. Okay, welcome back, and we are now going to start on our red rice perlo, another staple of when I grew up in Beaufort, South Carolina on St. Helena Island. My grandmother would make this a lot. I could usually look forward to red rice. They called it red rice. We call it red rice perlo. I could usually look forward to this after church every Sunday. My mother wouldn't make it because my father didn't allow us to eat pork. And now, ironically enough, I love pork. It's kind of like, you know, the forbidden fruit. I love pork. I like pork ribs. I like ham. I love pork chops. And of course, I love bacon. Now, do I eat it in huge amounts? No, I don't. I treat myself to it. And today, I'm treating you to red rice perlo. Now, we're rendering our bacon for the fat, as I said before, so that we can use it to saute our onions and peppers. When you see your bacon getting brown and crispy, that's the time you know when you can add in the peppers and onions. And I think now is the time. In fact, I know it's time now. So let's go ahead and add in some onions. And I've already chopped these onions, obviously. And let's now chop some peppers. And you want to chop them pretty finely, since they're going to incorporate themselves into the mixture. Now, originally, my grandmother used green peppers, but I do not like the taste of green peppers. So I use red peppers. And we're going to add that to the taste, to the recipe here. Now you're going to want to go ahead and saute that around. Okay. This is the time now. You can add some paprika, about a teaspoonful of paprika for a nice smoky flavor. Sort of a peppery without it being spicy. Okay, you want to move that around. And now let's add some salt, just a little. The bacon has salt in it already, so you don't want to use too much of it. And some black pepper, about enough to taste. Now, we'll go ahead and move that around. Now, once you've got that all incorporated, you'll want to add some garlic. And I have some garlic here. And we can just, some minced garlic, fresh as always. Once again, you're going to have to incorporate that in there. And we can now add in some water, about 2 ounces. At this point, you want to add in some tomato paste, about a tablespoon, and some good old ketchup, about another tablespoon. Okay? Great. Now, go ahead and incorporate all those ingredients together. And we'll want to, or now's the time you can add in your about a cup of cooked rice, or partially cooked rice, Basically what I've done is I've taken some rice and boiled it to the point where it's almost cooked. It's what we call par cooking, where you cook something halfway. And that's what I've done here. So now we're incorporating all of that flavor into this partially cooked rice, and we can now turn this down to a low. And while we're incorporating these ingredients, the tomato paste and all the other ingredients kind of infuse themselves into the red rice perlo. Once you've got that all incorporated, we can put it on simmer. I want to get the rest, sort of scrape that there like such. And that's all incorporated, as you can see. And it's really not that hard of a recipe. If you have everything sort of already pre-cooked and cut, you can do this pretty quickly. Some people like to add spicy sausage to it, or andouille sausage. Some people like to use non-pork items, and you can do all that. Here is some scallions. We'll go ahead and add those. And you can incorporate those in there for a nice bright flavor. And here's what we have, is a quick and simple red rice perlo. And we can now turn off the burner. And we'll find a plate for our red rice perlo. Welcome back. So now we are now going to plate our red rice perlo. Let's get a bowl. And let's go ahead and take our red rice perlo, which has been perfectly coated into the tomato sauces here. And go ahead and plate that up. This reminds me of Sunday on St. Helena Island. And just brings back a ton of memories. Now let's garnish this to make it look pretty and make it look sexy. So that's what you want these days, pretty and sexy. So what I do is I go ahead and sort of take some scallions, cut it on a bias, which means cut it on an angle, and let's give it a nice sexy bow tie. And here we are with the bottom of the scallion, and we'll do that. And then you have your red rice perlo. And do stay tuned for our coming episodes. We'll be doing a couple more episodes in Durham and some other locations down south, and a couple in Baltimore. Thank you for joining It's So Delicious, and we'll see you next time. Welcome back to It's So Delicious. As stated before, I'm now going to start on our shrimp and grits. And as you can see here, I've got some grits simmering here. And now is the point where I add some cream. And for this recipe, I'm using a bit of heavy whipping cream. I'm also using some Yellowstone ground grits. And you'll want to start off with a seafood stock, is my secret to my grits. And basically, you take the shells from the shrimp, take some onions and some carrots and some garlic, and you boil it in water. And let's get this kind of whipped in here. I'm going to add some butter, which I have here, and some heavy whipping cream. Okay, so we have our unsalted butter, which we will add to our Yellowstone ground grits, about a tablespoon. And we can place that back. Now, with our stock, I did about 3 cups of water with our shells from our shrimp, onions, carrots, and garlic, which I boiled and then drained off as a stock. And that's what I've cooked the Yellowstone ground grits in. Okay, we're to the point where we've added our butter. We're now going to add about 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. And we'll go ahead and start that. I've also added about, I did some kosher salt to taste. And I will also add a bit of minced garlic. And we can go ahead and add the garlic now. And just whip that in. You want to make sure you whip it in so that it doesn't congeal or lump. I find that using a whip while you're pouring in the stone ground grits helps it to maintain its smooth, velvety consistency. So what I'm doing down here is mincing the garlic, and I've sort of got 2 cloves here that I've gathered and I've smashed with the end of the knife here. And you want to just kind of clean it off the knife here and just sort of cut that up in strips. I'm always mincing garlic. Garlic is one of my favorite ingredients to use in cooking. I always like to rinse off my hands when I do garlic work because I don't want it to linger on my hands. I like it in my mouth, but not on my hands. So let's go ahead and whisk in your garlic, and gives it a nice bright flavor. And I've had this boiling on low heat for about 20 minutes while whisking in the other ingredients. And it's about done. So I will set this on simmer here, and we'll go ahead and leave our whisk here away. And now we can work on our shrimp and sauce recipe. So let's go ahead and turn on our burner to low heat, medium heat, and that's good there. And we'll get that nice and hot, and we'll turn on the other burner on low heat so that we may saute in our shrimp. Now I'm going to wipe this pan clean here because a little splash from the heavy whipping cream somehow got in the pan. I don't know. Anyway, it's gone now. That's what we want. So let's go ahead and mince some more garlic because we'll need that. I've cut these in sort of slices, and we want to mince them. We don't want them to be too heavy in the sauce. So once again, we're just kind of cutting that in strips. And I love shrimp and grits. My grandfather used to shrimp. He was a shrimp boat guy. Well, he wasn't so much a shrimp boat guy as in he went and gathered seafood for the family, whether it be whiting or shrimp or crabs. My grandfather used to do that. I went out on the boat with him one day, I think when I was a little boy, and remember running around catching these small little crabs with the one big hand, and they're running around like this. And my grandfather would be on the boat looking at me strangely. But that was fun. So now we're going to gather that around and go ahead and set this aside for our shrimp. Now, our pans should be at the temperature that we need them to be at this point. Let's go ahead and finish putting in the rest of this garlic. And let's wipe off our knife. Great. And let's wipe off our cutting board. I always like to have clean things around me when I'm making food. I like for my board to be clean and my knife to always be clean as well. So our pan is nice and hot, and you can tell. Just get a little bit of water on your hands and go ahead, and that's good. That's on simmer as well. All right, so let's add our oil. And there we go. And let's make sure this oven is off. And we can now add in our butter, unsalted, of course, because I use unsalted butter because I want to control the amount of salt that's going in my food. And that's one of the reasons I use it. Now, I'm going to take some of this oil and put it in here. Okay, I've coated the pan there, and that's going to be for a later recipe. I am now going to add in some rendered bacon fat. And we'll add that in like such. And kind of swirl it around here. And let's add in our onions. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of onions. Okay, that's nice and hot. There we go. And let's add a little bit more. I love onions, can never have enough onions for me. And let's go ahead and add our fresh Holland bell peppers. Sweet Holland bell peppers. Okay. And let's go ahead and kind of swirl that around. We can now add some crumbled bacon that I added earlier, I cooked earlier rather. Okay. And it's about 2 strips. You know, you just kind of crumble it up and it falls apart easily by itself. And just kind of swirl that around. Now let's add just a little bit of salt, not a lot, and some pepper, freshly ground pepper. And I also have some paprika. Okay, and we'll add about half a tablespoon of paprika, which gives it a nice smoky, mild, peppery taste. And let's go ahead and sort of move that around, like such. Okay, and this is the base for our shrimp and for the shrimp sauce for the shrimp and grits. Okay, we can now add some flour, and this is unbleached white flour, and that's about a tablespoon. And you want to kind of let that sit and let the flour sort of a tan color. And that's probably be about, I'd say that'll be about 2 minutes. In the meantime, we can turn up our pan for our shrimp, which we're going to just ever so slightly cook. We're just going to saute it a little. We can now turn our grits to simmer or off, and we can let that kind of just simmer there. Okay? So while this flour is browning, I can tell that it's almost brown. Not quite there yet. So let's go ahead and take our shrimp and go ahead and add it to, I'm going to have this on high heat because I want to cook this very quickly. Okay, so let's go ahead and add that in. And we can carefully keep our eye on that shrimp because we don't want the shrimp to overcook and become too tough. That's one of the problems. So we'll just kind of toss it in the oil and let it sit a little. And once this flour is brown enough, which will be any moment now, we can add our stock to thicken the sauce. And I'm just going to add a little bit more paprika. And let's move this around a bit. The flour is starting to brown. And let's go ahead and saute our shrimp. Great. If you guys ever get a chance, you should really visit the low country of South Carolina. It's really beautiful. I recommend March, April, when it's not too humid, and check out the scenery there. You'll love it. Now, this is the point where I'm going to go ahead and do what chefs call deglazing. I'm going to go ahead and add some white wine, which I have here. There. And let's go ahead and add about a half a cup of white wine and a little bit more of this rendered bacon fat. Okay, and just kind of give it a swirl. We can also add some water. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and add the water there. That was about a half a cup of water. Our shrimp looks like it's now ready to go. We'll turn our pan of the shrimp off, and we'll go ahead and add it to the shrimp and grits recipe. There's one last survivor there. Let's go ahead and dump that guy in. And you should also check out the Spoleto Festival in Charleston, South Carolina. I think that's in the month of May, I believe, May or June. It runs the entire month. One of the reasons why people visit Charleston. And now that our shrimp has sauteed to our satisfaction, we can go ahead and sort of cover the shrimp with the sauce and You know, when you're cooking, you always want to give what you're cooking a little taste, just to ensure the flavor is there. And we'll let that simmer. We'll turn that low. We don't want the shrimp to overcook. So let's add our remaining butter. And that's about a teaspoon, not much. And while this is simmering, we can add a little bit of lemon juice. Not a lot, just a little. Okay, that's barely a teaspoonful, barely. And you want to kind of incorporate that into the shrimp and grits mixture. And let's give that a taste. That could use a little bit more salt. So let's add a little bit more salt to that. Okay, and let's go ahead and incorporate that salt into the sauce. And now we can add some scallions. So I've got some scallions sitting here, and I've already removed the roots. I have them sitting in water. And let's go ahead and sort of cut that up. And that's about all we need for our recipe. Let's move the green. I also like to use the green part as well as the milder, whiter part of the scallion. Just gives it that extra build of flavor, if you know what I mean. So let's gather that up, and this can go away. And we can use the rest of this for our garnish later. Okay, and let's go ahead and see how this is working out. All right, you see you have a nice kind of tan colored sauce there. Okay. And we'll want to move that around. And let's taste again. I think that's on this time. Although I do want to thin it out a bit. So let's add some water. Welcome back. And so let's go ahead now and plate up our shrimp and grits. So these lovely velvety grits have been sort of sitting here and behaving themselves until they're ready for the shrimp to cover them. So let's go ahead and give them a plate to rest in. There we go. And there you go. Here, about, I guess about a cup full. And let's now go ahead and place our shrimp on top of our velvety, creamy grits. And so let's give it some sauce. There you go. A little more sauce. I love the sauce. Love the sauce. So let's go ahead and get rid of this guy here. And there you have it. Some shrimp and grits with a little bit of fresh scallions there. And we can go ahead and, I don't know, some people like wine. Some people like cranberry juice with their shrimp and grits. Some people like water. I like beer with my shrimp and grits. I like a nice Pilsner. And let's go ahead and get one of those and pour us a Pilsner to go alongside of this shrimp and grits. And I think there's nothing better than a glass of crisp cold beer with your shrimp and grits. And thank you so much for watching this episode of It's So Delicious. Enjoy this in good health, and we'll see you next episode. Thank you so much for watching this episode of It's So Delicious. Special thanks to the Convention and Visitors Bureau of Durham, North Carolina, also the Arts Institute of Durham, Raleigh, North Carolina, as well as the Kitchen Specialists, which has amazing kitchen models here. You'll want to visit this place. It's in Durham, and they've got professional grade appliances, amazing representations of kitchens that you may want to have in your home. I'm going to leave you here with a side of red rice perlo and a glass of California Chardonnay. Remember to enjoy you and your family during these holidays, and stay tuned for the next episode of It's So Delicious.